So to set the stage for our conversation with Christian this afternoon, I would like to draw attention to some key facts about the feet and why foot health is important in the context of diabetes. So first, the anatomy of the foot. The human foot contains 26 bones, 107 ligaments, 19 muscles, and 7,200 nerve endings that control form and function. Our feet are very important in our day-to-day lives. They are key to our mobility, and they take a lot of wear and tear as we use them to stand, walk, run, climb, and all sorts of other activities. Diabetes has a significant potential for impacting your feet, and foot problems are a major cause of injury and death for people with diabetes. High blood sugar can cause poor blood flow and nerve damage to legs and feet, and poor blood flow and nerve damage can lead to slower healing and reduced ability to feel an injury. Uncontrolled diabetes can result in foot infections, complications, and potentially lead to the need for an amputation. Preventing amputations is one of the goals of bringing this webinar to you today, as awareness is an important first step in managing health, managing diabetes, and preventing complications. And we're really excited to have this firsthand story here today. According to Diabetes Canada, there's an amputation every 4 hours as a result of a diabetic foot ulcer. Over 1.5 million Ontarians were living with diabetes in 2015, and between 17,000 and 27,000 of those had a diabetic foot ulcer, and nearly 2,000 had an amputation below the knee. Amputations can be prevented. Awareness, improved foot screening and foot care, and increased government funding for specialized services can all help to prevent amputations. Most amputations begin with ulcerations. Most ulcerations are preventable, and it is important to take action if you see changes in your feet. With that in mind, I would like to take this moment to introduce Christian Swan, who will be joining us today to tell his story. So Christian, please feel free to unmute yourself, and may you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and where you're from.
Bonjour, my name is Christian Swan, and I come from a place called Lake Manitoba, also known as Daw Creek. Come from the Bear Clan. My spirit name is Blue Thunderbird Man, and I welcome all of you to hear my story. It's not every day that you find out that your life changes within a very short period of time. As she talked about the ulcerations, I started off with a blister at the bottom of my foot, and then from there, a wound opened up, and having that fear of going into the hospital was part of it. Kind of ties into residential schools, like the treatment there, what happened to Indigenous families being taken and subjected to entering a place of learning. And I think with all learning, we all play different parts in how we educate and help people understand the challenges that we face trying to get healthy, or to learn different strategies on making those changes. So I don't know if you want me to go into my story and start sharing from there.
Sure. So so we know you recently experienced some health complications related to diabetes. Do you want to tell a little bit about how you came to see changes or problems, or how you came to know that you had diabetes?
I was 27 when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. They sent me for blood work, and I went in and done that, and they gave me medication. I didn't agree with the medication at the beginning, and then I moved to Ontario in the past 7 years. I went to university there. I went to Shingwak or Algoma University. And Shingwak was a chief that attended the residential schools there, and he traveled with the bishops, and he got it put in paper that they would teach Indigenous studies and our ideologies and how to progress as a nation and how we own our own story. And that was the vision that was put there in place for him. So my story starts off, I did all these movements, walking for missing and murdered, walked around Lake Manitoba, and walking was a very important part for me, because a few times in my life the diabetes left, and from having those layoffs of not walking, there was exercise in between and lots of water, and the meals were different. So following a diet, I guess, was probably the thing that helped me at the beginning. And in the most recent, the past couple years, is when my foot problems kind of started. Like I started feeling numb on the fingers and the feet, and I knew I had to make changes, but carrying certain aspects, like being afraid to go to the doctor was one of them. Like the pain that was there, but living in silence, I guess, because the treatment of with residential schools did, like it put that fear inside of people, and especially if you're Indigenous. Like my grandma was murdered in 1971. My grandpa was shot 4 times. Their children were taken part of the 60 scoop. So if we look at how the trauma plays into how a person's affected, I grew up in a broken family, and my dad's partner abused me for 16 years, and every time I went to the hospital, like I wasn't allowed to have pain medicines. And today I don't like taking pills or anything, like, but I do it because it helps me in the end. Like giving myself the insulin shots and taking the metformin, and that's basically what I'm doing right now, and trying to follow a diet where it's high in protein and a lot of the not bleached sugar and flours, and trying to make that positive impact on myself and around my family. Because my brother just went into the hospital too, and his sugars were 33, and like for me, losing my leg should have been a wake up call for him. And like I have to go see him at the hospital today. I think he's got some bad news, but I'm gonna keep positive and try and keep that positivity going with him, like to catch things early enough and hope for the best. But going back to my leg, about March 6th, March 13th, I went into the emergency in Edmonton, Alberta. I drove my auntie to go visit my mom, and then I knew about the open blister already, because it happened probably a month earlier. It started off as a blister, and I popped a blister, and then from the skin trying to heal, it opened up as a wound, and from that wound, I guess the blood started wasn't circulating. It was just sitting there. Like if you ever seen how blood flows, that blood was just sitting there. And then coming home from Edmonton, they left a line in me. They sent me home with paperwork to take to the hospital to start the antibiotics. and it's a 16-hour drive from Edmonton to Winnipeg. So I went probably about one day, 24 hours of not being on the antibiotics. By the time we got to the hospital here, um, I had to go through the emergency, and then you could already see the coloration of the toes starting to turn black. So the gangrene had already started setting in. They sent me for the X-rays, the CT scan, and then they told me they were transferring me to the Health Sciences Center, where I learned that I'm gonna lose my leg. And when I heard that, it was very heartbreaking. My life's changing now. I got to accept things and not stay stuck. So I did my crying. I had my sister-in-law come over. She asked a few questions and brought out more of my feelings. And from there, I came to terms. I thanked her for coming to visit me. And then I laid in my bed and thought about it. I started looking up amputations, why people get amputated. And from what I understand about amputations, the two leading amputations are cancer and diabetes, where you lose limbs and hope of trying to catch the virus or the sickness at the early stages. And before the gangrene sets in, because the way I kind of understand it, it's like a flesh eating, but not really a flesh eating. It just eats away at your body. It deteriorates and it grows, and it's just like catching it at an early stage or following a diet and going on the meds is the alternatives. Um, so with that, the way I understand diabetes is a silent killer among people, and it hits the indigenous population even higher because with the residential schools, how they experimented with different foods and whatnot, it broke the metabolism that our bodies are used to break down the sicknesses. Like in terms of cookies that they gave the children that were attending these residential schools, and along those lines, we're not allowed to. Our bodies aren't allowed to break down certain things, like the alcoholism plays a part if you like the drink, because a lot of the yeast that's in the alcohol turns into sugar within your body, so your body is constantly trying to fight that sugar. And like the foods that we take, the intake, our pancreas breaks down the sugars within our body, and if your pancreas isn't producing enough insulin, then you're probably a type 1, and a type 1 is where you're not working at full capacity and you're not producing enough insulin. So that's why they do the insulin shots. And the way I understand the metformin is helps regulate the sugars. Like I'm on 2 capsules, one in the morning and one at supper time. And then I poke myself about 4 times within the day, in the morning, lunch, supper, and at nighttime I use the nighttime insulin. So I'm very fortunate for things to be like that right now. I'm scheduled for to do more blood work, so my doctor could adjust the doses, and that's where we want to get to. With the other foot, it's doing a lot of work that um, with the walking and hopping on it, eh? So there was a little bit of an ulcer. I showed my doctor that. She's sending me to a foot doctor now. We're gonna get that under control, and I'm just looking forward to getting the cast mold. There was 33 stitches or staples in the leg below the knee, and it's healing up nicely. Did you have a question? Or
I
your
just wondered if you'd like me to share your photos now, if that would help you to explain some of the pieces about what happened and your journey.
all right?
Okay, so Christian did share some photographs with me this morning that document part of his journey. I'm going to share my screen now so that you can speak to those photos, Christian, but I just want to let our audience know that the image do include some images of your foot ulcers and the trauma, and it might be difficult for some people to look at. So we're sharing them because they're important, but if you're uncomfortable with those types of images, do just note that I'm going to put those on the screen for a few moments. Hey, Christian, can you see those?
Okay, the foot where there's the blister, like where there's the open wound, it see how big the blister was? That's how it started, was through a blister, and then I popped that blister, and then walking on the foot, split open the foot down the center. So if you're able to see the color of how dark it gets there in the center of that open wound, and that's when I kind of knew something wasn't right with my foot. Like I was already having a hard time walking, and as we look to the picture, the image next to that foot, this is when I got back to Winnipeg at the Seven Oaks Hospital, and that's when the gangrene set in. Because the next image over to the right is the skeleton foot, and it's the way it was explained to me is a lot of the cloudiness within the picture, like how she talked about the foot having 26 bones, like you should be able to see the 26 bones clearly, but a lot of the cloudedness was the gangrene setting in, and like the foot really swelled up when I was in the Seven Oaks Hospital. So with all that information that was already gathered is when they decided we got to stop this before it grows any further, and that was the gangrene. So if we go down to the bottom pages, like the bottom pictures, it shows the beginning of the staples, like when they were cleaning my dressings and whatnot. I asked them to take pictures so I could share my pictures with people, eh? And that's how it basically started for me, was sharing the pictures and people seeing me do the walks and whatnot. They recognized it, and I think it helped help the young man with what he's going through. And I'm pretty sure he's got diabetes, and he knows to keep active and to changing the lifestyle. So as we look to that last picture of the stump, that's how it's healed so far. It's progressed nicely. I felt when I was getting released from the hospital, it was a rush process. I got 5 minutes of taking shots with insulin. The dietary person came, gave me a 2-minute course on that. And then the medical equipment and whatnot, there was kind of a little bit of delay. I don't know if that's normal, but and then being sent home, like discharge plans were supposed to be put in place, but I think it was rushed. And when we look at the different programs for an amputee, Like you got the Easter Steels, you got Schreier's Hospital, you got the War Amps. Like I think those things need to be put in place in how to help somebody that's going through something like that, or be able to speak on that and to assist them of how their life is going to change, because a big part of it is the depression. If I didn't look past all of this, and I think I would have been depressed to know my life's changing. I'm not going to be able to walk, and like I'm always out there going here, there, doing ceremony, and like that's how much my life's changed. Like the things I love doing, they're gone now. But I give myself tests all the time. Like I'll go wheeling myself down the street just to see if I could do it. You know, if I had to do it for myself. And I think in a healing journey, we have to look at the alternatives, not stay stuck in the present, and try and bring the positive out in how we help each other and help ourselves. I think that's very vital to how we heal as a society, because the systems in which we live in is broken. Like you got all these politicians that set the stage, and then they can't even follow their own laws that they produce. So when you look at Brian Sinclair, he was Indigenous man that was at the Health Sciences Center. He was checked in for diabetes. He was a double amputee. He lost both of his legs. They assumed he was drunk and addicted to drugs. In 34 hours, they never checked on him once. He reported to the glass, the triangle, or triage, whatever they call it. And that was the only time they seen him, when they did the internal review. Now, when we look at Jordan's principle, where I'm going with all this is inadequate funding. So Jordan's principle was a young boy where the province of Manitoba, the federal government, and the Indigenous government fought about who was going to cover the health expenses for this young boy. So the young boy dies, and an inquest is done. And in these findings, they look at the underfunding for Indigenous people. Now, if we live in a just society, I think we need to transition into a better place in how we make these programs help with the healing, and how there's options there. Because without these programs in place, we might as well say we're losing both of our limbs or something. And that's the way I see what's wrong with the system, and how much further we need to do something to make those changes to help our people. So I think that's part of the healing, like being able to share stories, because my story is similar to other people's stories, just a little bit different. And some people choose to give up, like in terms of being able to walk again. That's my goal, is to be able to walk. I don't know, when I was in the hospital, I seen lots of things, like seeing myself back at university and finishing my double major. I'm studying political science and law, and I seen that in a vision, like that's the way to help your people. And then when I think of Terry Fox and like how he ran across Canada, I think of that as a possibility too, to raising awareness for people that are diabetic. because when you look at how things impact people, I think raising that awareness and helping your community is number one, first and foremost, because you're doing your part in life, assisting, and it's not. I'm not after nothing. I just want to help people in that way, where they find comfort in who they are and their abilities, because everyone's different and we all go through different feelings and emotions. What I was told in ceremony is the women go through the emotions and the men are just learning about their feelings. Like when you're in a sweat lodge, you're going into your mother's womb, and when that water's spilled, it's like you feel that breath of life. And I don't know, I just think that's important to share those kind of aspects of being in ceremony, because part of that healing, and there's not just one person that does the healing. Like it's everyone that partakes in those ceremonies, those sharing circles, passing of the feather, like because it's important what everyone has to say, and they contribute to that healing, praying together in one prayer. So something has to work there, and I think how we look at the medicines on the land, like when I was living in Ontario, I was given the option of trying traditional medicines. I tried ironwood. It was to help the heart, the way it was explained to me. And then I tried some other roots and parts of trees, I guess, to bringing my sugar levels down. And I like that aspect, like to use both of the medicines, because it really helped me. And then things changed again in my life, and I kind of steered away from the medicines and being stubborn, I guess, carrying the wrong things, and brings me to today, and I'm back to being level and humbling myself, I guess, is a way of looking at it, because of the changes, and those things uh those things are there, and those are what I'm faced with. Um, I know it's kind of hard on my family a little bit, like my mother especially. And I tell her not to feel bad. Like, I'm not looking for the pity. Like, there's got to be a point where we pick ourselves up and dust ourselves, because throughout life, the healing, we always learn something new, and there's never going to be an end stage to what we learn. So, making change and accepting things for what they are, not staying in the present, looking towards the future, and how could you help another person that is going through something similar. And I know the pictures and whatnot help some people from this area go into the hospital and get checked out. They had some surgeries done, and like I know it's good, like in terms of how they reached out to me and asked me what happened with my leg, and I shared pictures and talked about how I took things for granted and didn't go to the hospital when I should have, and should have went back on the medication. Being stubborn and was my fault, and like I can't blame anyone for anything. Like when I was in Edmonton, I was more or less worried about my financial status, because I had a bingo going for me in the reserve, and I had a little pizza business and cigarette shop, and like that's where my mind was, and that's my only regret. Like coming home, I should have stayed in Edmonton and stayed in the hospital when I was there. In the end, I ended up losing my foot, and was it worth it? I don't think so, but that's a learning thing, and I accepted it, and I know I'm gonna walk again. I know that. I believe that in my heart.
Thank you, Christian. It's your story is really inspiring, and I think you're sharing some really important things that help us really understand that, it's not just one thing. It's many things. It's, history and healthcare systems and the busyness of life and, our own strengths and weaknesses all
Yeah,
influence
well,
these experiences.
I think understanding that type 1 and type 2 diabetes is very important. Like the way I understand type 1 is your pancreas is does that all that work, that wonderful work to regulate your sugars, and then type 2 is like a borderline thing, changing your lifestyle. It's like you get a warning, and then if you don't follow those lines or those stages or the warning signs, then it progresses to amputation. And someone to go through that, like they're not prepared, or if they don't have the right supports in place, um, can be very challenging. And if you have those kind of supports in place and knowing what you're up against, and like I was always told, maybe you should join an amputee group and hear other people's stories. Like, could be good for healing. And because of the COVID, like those groups have been shut down at the hospital. But I was very interested in trying them, to help me, and then the physiotherapy that comes along with it, and getting your stump prepared for the wrapping change, like how they want your to shape your foot, and all this I'm just learning as I go, and trying to remember how to share those programs that are in place already. And like, so the webinar can help educate along with those lines of there's programs in place. All right, that's a bonus. There's this. If we change our eating habits, then this happens. If we stay physically active, the blood's flowing. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you could look at this. And it's just we can't just blame one thing. We gotta look at the alternatives, and how do we make things better and make it work better for all people, not just one people. We just gotta make the positives, take it and go with it, and yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Christian, I see a couple comments in the chat box here, and I'll read them out to you, and maybe you can respond if you want to. And I'll also tell anybody else that wants to drop a question or a comment for Christian in the chat box, you can go ahead. So Crystal Bomberry says, you are truly inspiring, such important words and teachings. Nyawagoa, thank you so much. And Camille McLeish says, Christian, thank you for your courage and honesty in sharing your story. And I agree. I think it takes a lot of courage to share this story. And I wonder, what is your message for others who might be at risk for developing diabetes or complications such as amputation?
Well, the message, I think when you really do think about it, think about diabetes awareness and amputation. I think it goes hand in hand with cancers, like understanding those two leading causes for amputation. And I know if the workshops happen in the communities and whatnot, and like similar stories are shared, and like how do we transition from this to this to prevent this, like is a big part of it. And not everyone's gonna buy into the idea either, because we're all situated with different circumstances. Like you look at a community, could be alcoholism and drugs. And how do you combat that? How do you combat mental illness? Mental illness is very hard to detect for the medical profession. But I think when we really do look at the big picture, we're all affected in different ways. Sometimes we carry a lot of the traumas, and that's how I understand this sickness. It's like a trauma within the body. Your body goes into shock and certain parts of your body stop working. So having that exercise and a diet and lots of water and like I think within the past little while I taste the sugar within the fruits and vegetables like more so like because I cut down on the sugar. Like I don't even drink pop. Just when this all happened, they were trying to give me the twin sugar. I tried it a couple times and I didn't agree with it. I'll just drink without sugar. That's what I told myself, and that's kind of the way it went. And that was very helpful, quitting the sugar there in the hospital. And then my levels were in the high 20s, 27 and whatnot. And finally, I got them down to 5.9, and like that was a big change in the healing and the information that was there on the internet. Like that helped a lot with the healing. And then when I came home, my sister was showing how to do the insulin because of her pregnancy. They thought she might be diabetic, and then in the end, she ended up not being diabetic, but she was able to help me how to do the insulin shots and whatnot. And so that was very beneficial having someone that's been through it. And I think those things need to be put in place. Like this is good. All of it's good. Like how this whole thing started talking about the foot and the bone and the ulcers. I was told that with when you lose a leg, it's usually the other leg that wants to follow. I don't know if it's like twins and you feel your twins' pain or whatever, but that's kind of how I understand the feet. They like the other foot's doing a lot of work now, hopping around and whatnot. But I know not to stay stuck in the wheelchair and confined, and I know I'm gonna walk again. I believe that.
Christian, there's a comment in the chat box, which I think is great. You've talked a little bit about your stubbornness or your unwillingness at the beginning, maybe to look at your behaviors or seek help. And I know there's a lot of complexities there, but Talia asks, how did you overcome your stubbornness? What inspired you or motivated you to seek help and to make change?
I think for me it was my foot was bleeding at the bottom of the when I walked, when I was able to walk. But you could see clearly there was a limp in the walk, and like there was a lot of pain. And like at the end there, I was laying down lots. I found that I wasn't as active as I normally am, and like coming to those terms, holy shit, my foot's like this. I'm in this pain, and then my mom kind of talks to me and tells me, I think you should go in. And I look at my foot. Then on the other side, the toes are starting to change in color. So that scared me enough. All right, I'm going in. I think I shouldn't be afraid of what I'm faced with here. So I decided, came to terms with myself and my heart, and that was it. I had to go in. usually when my family tells me certain things, I'll go do it, and that's just basically how we operate because of how their mother had passed away. She was murdered, and like their brother committed suicide when he turned 18. He shot himself in the reserve, and like one of the uncles was sold to the States, and just like a sad story, but there was always love there. So that's basically what it was for us, is to stay strong and to love each other. So that's how it worked for me, and how I gave up the stubbornness, because usually something that's life changing, that where we have to wake up and come out of that imaginary dream and face the realities. Okay, this is what's happening now. How do we go about it? So that was how it worked for me.
Thank you so much, Christian. I think your story is really interesting and really has the potential to get people thinking about acting fast when they see changes to their feet and to paying attention to their diabetes. I really think it's a moving and important story, and I hope it motivates others to pay attention to their risk factors and to seek help if they need it. I'm going to take a pause now and share my screen for a moment. Give people a chance to maybe think if they have any more questions for you. So stay tuned with us here. And if you have any questions for Christian, you can type them in the chat box. And I'm just going to put up a few tips following on what Christian has been saying to make sure we leave here with some tips and tricks as well around foot health. So foot health, is really important, and the management of foot health requires attention to three main areas of concern. So one is our blood glucose or sugar levels. So if our blood sugar levels are very high, this is a big risk factor for our foot health. The next is blood flow to our feet or our circulation, and then foot wound care. So some signs to watch for, and we do suggest that you pay attention to your feet, make note of changes, and seek help. So look for signs of changes to blood flow or peripheral arterial disease that might look like cold feet or numbness or leg cramping after activities like walking or climbing the stairs. Watch for signs of nerve damage, including numbness, burning, or tingling. And I know, Christian, you mentioned some of that with the tingling in the extremities. And then pay attention to common foot concerns. So small changes to your skin and nails and the structure of your foot might be visible, that might include fallen arches or bunions, or changes in the flexibility of your toes or your feet. You might look for changes to your soft tissue, so very, very dry skin, fissures or cracks, corns, blisters, or open sores or ulceration, or if you have ingrown toenails or thickened toenails or infections on your nails or just deformation from trauma. All these little things are important to pay attention to, especially if you have diabetes, because the small problems can quickly become big problems, and the big problems can lead to amputation, especially if blood sugars are high or out of control. Some top tips for foot health. So one, manage your blood sugars, because high blood sugar increases risk for challenges with foot health. Inspect your feet every day. So use a mirror to see all the surfaces of your feet and ask for help if you're not able to see everything. Tell a healthcare professional immediately if you have redness, callus buildup, open sores or wounds, or ingrown nails. Wash your feet every day with a non-perfumed soap for 5 to 10 minutes in warm water. Make sure you rinse off all the soap and dry your feet completely, especially between the toes. Moisturize your feet within 3 minutes of bathing them on a daily basis, but make sure no cream is left in between the toes. Check your toenails are smooth and cut straight across. And it's recommended to have a professional cut your toenails if you do have diabetes. We suggest wearing socks and shoes or slippers at all times, including in the house, to help prevent injury. To check your footwear before putting it on, and make sure your footwear has a good fit, doesn't rub or press anywhere. Going for a walk, getting exercise, even a slow walk, really helps with blood flow to the feet. So aim for 20 minutes each day if you can. And remember to reach out to IDHC for information, resources, and support, or to your healthcare provider annually for a complete foot inspection or anytime you see changes. Remember, you can keep your feet healthy. 80% of major lower limb amputations are preventable. 85% of amputations are preceded by foot ulcers. So do your best to manage your diabetes and stay informed, but also know there's help out there. Know if you're at risk, have regular foot exam and professional foot care. Perform a daily foot exam to take care of your feet. And just like Christian has so eloquently spoken of today, don't live in fear. Don't live in stubbornness. Try to reach out and get help. And you can always check in with us here at IDHC. We have a foot care program that can help bridge the gap if you're not sure where to get foot services. We have a lot of knowledge and resources as well. And I see Camille, our nurse, our client services nurse from IDHC, is here in the chat box reminding us that small things are very important to get help for right away.